People, today is Thursday, June 25th, 2026. Now this.
We're back with the New Yorker's Jelani Cobb, Dean of Columbia Journalism School, and the New York Times' Michelle Goldberg, a columnist and MS Now analyst. I tie it all together with Trump wants it to be one way, but increasingly it is the other way. For all of the concern about how the other branches have failed for years. On these stories tonight, I think the evidence shows the courts and the Senate, to some degree, are saying, no, it's the other way.
It's the other way. So there are a few things that I think are significant here, right? One is that even red states don't like the idea of turning over their voter rolls to the federal government. Like, there is a bridge too far. The other is something we remember way back to the 2016 election, something that people had historically thought of as maybe a kind of bureaucratic throwback or something that was a headache, or inefficiency or whatever. But the vastly decentralized nature of American elections actually works to our advantage here, because there are so many different levers and there's so many different things. It's not easy. It's not a kind of like single switch kind of flip one switch and you can put your thumb on the scale for a national election. God knows they've tried, with multiple kinds of avenues. But I think that this is the ways in which a system that would otherwise seem archaic winds up actually beginning to seem brilliant.
I mean, as you said, there's a lot of red state opposition to various parts of this. People in red states vote by mail. My parents live in Arizona, where almost everybody votes by mail, which is, a very, very purple state. And I also think that the Republicans probably don't want to pass the SAVE Act. This is the kind of voter suppression law that Donald Trump is holding hostage, this bipartisan housing bill, because it would also create a lot of problems for their own voters because of how onerous it is to sort of prove citizenship, especially if you've changed your name. And then I think the final part is just that Donald Trump, he came in with this kind of terrifying amount of political capital, and he has, squandered it as flagrantly as he squandered money as a casino owner. And so now you have him, with kind of extremely low poll numbers. There is this fascinating story in The Bulwark about how his campaign is doing this kind of outreach to QAnon, and, with this sort of QAnon-themed social media campaign. And they're all like, screw you, we don't, I feel like when you lost QAnon, right, you're not somebody who kind of has this, movement behind you anymore.
QAnon hard to find, hard to lose, but once, as you say, we've gone through the life cycle of that. And it speaks also to the weakness of everyone on the right bracing for a loss. Now, we've all covered, and you teach students, and I'm sure you advise people at the Times and others who seek your counsel about not getting ahead of reality, because reality will tell us the story.
Sure.
But I want to show briefly Tucker and others who think the reality is, and Trump is acting like they are on the way to losing.
Tucker, where this leaves the future of the MAGA movement?
I mean, the future of the MAGA, well, that's over. There's no future of the MAGA movement, obviously, we're done.
The only thing I'll say is that the MAGA movement has been like, the villain in a movie at the end where like, the villain is dead, but no, it's not. Actually, it's about to, like, jump back out of the grave and come get you. It's rumors of his death have been greatly exaggerated many times previously. But I do think that there's something here, so what has happened, historically or generally with this administration is that the machinery that's meant to create electoral equality has been taken over in order to create electoral inequality. The same sorts of claims have been, I think that some elements of the Republican Party are aware of the ways in which this could go the opposite way. And what I mean by that is that, when you look at a state like Alaska, which voted for Trump, and their reliance upon mail-in ballots because it's Alaska. Like, do you really want to get on board with that? There are lots of local people, there are lots of statewide people, their congressional delegation. Nobody is unaware of the ways in which they are dependent upon this, and you can create a system that winds up disadvantaging them, not just in 2026, but 2028 and down, like, long after Donald Trump has left the White House.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, but I also think that Donald Trump, in some sense, knows that this is coming for him. And, you know, obviously, we can't be sure. A lot of things could still go wrong for Democrats. You know, some of the congressional generic polls are closer than you would like or think given Trump's unpopularity. Nevertheless, I mean, the most likely outcome is Democrats taking at least one branch of Congress and Donald Trump spending the next 2 years in, you know, sort of endless hearings and subpoenas and investigations. Kennedy said as much when he tried to pressure a libertarian member of Congress to drop out of the race, saying, you know, I don't want to spend, you know, the Republican needs to win because I don't want to spend the next 2 years in hearings. And so, and I also think it's important for all of the kind of people in all of these agencies that are tasked with carrying out Trump's will for that to become increasingly real to them. Right, that everything they do now, they're going to be sitting in front of a congressional committee answering for.
Yeah, and Jelani, the judges though are also giving very clear guidance. I mean, I mentioned the almost absurdity, but we have to be serious and be ready, of weaponizing the mailmen and mailwomen and mail workers in the country into a voter suppression force. But the judges ruling against this, and there being hearings and it being on record, really does put pressure on those individuals to hand out the damn ballots, and if they get an illegal order from the president's office, which happened in 2020, like Mike Pence did, to disregard illegal orders because the judge has already ruled.
Right, but I mean, it's also, you know, how do you build a constitutional crisis?
Yeah.
You know, in 3 easy steps, because, you know, this is, you know, the territory we start saying, who do you listen to? And so when we think about, you know, Mark Kelly, and all the heat that he took for saying that you should disobey illegal orders, which seems to be very straightforward. Like the only time you could have a problem with someone saying that is if you intend to tell people to do things
Right.
that
like
are in fact
black letter law.
illegal.
Yeah.
Right. And so the other part of it that makes me a little bit anxious and curious about how this plays out is the consistent weaponization of the DOJ and how that will be a factor, the kind of X factor in how all this plays out. You know, launching investigations into election returns or whatever. I mean, that is not a kind of far out scenario. That could be part of the equation too that we're looking at beyond the midterms.
Yeah, it's what I mean. When I show those arrows and remind people, that's civic exercise, so folks are ready. Last time, the DOJ arrow got stopped by Bill Barr, whatever you think.
That's right, right, yeah.
This time, these type of leaders of the DOJ may not, and so then everyone has to be ready to interpret that. The DOJ yelling something is not the same as reliable sources or journalists
Right.
telling you it's a fact, or even the Supreme Court, what everyone thinks of it, ruling at the end of the process. It's just their campaign arm now, and it should be dealt with the same skepticism of a convicted campaign, basically. Michelle and Jelani, I want to thank you both on this convo. We'll see you by the end of the hour for something a little different. There is a growing consensus in America, left, right, and center, that Trump lost the war. Even the comics agree.
But this deal almost makes it seem like we lost the war. You remember what happened last time we tried to tell him he lost something?
He tried to kill Mike Pence.
He tried to kill Mike Pence.